we get a mass of 33 billion tons. That's the minimum mass. The object needs to be more massive than that.
3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth, currently racing through our solar system. Now, astronomers have captured that moment live, streaming in real time around the globe of them watching all of this. Take a look at this.
What if a comet isn't breaking, it's building, not dust, not ice? Gleaming shapes that catch the sun like mirrors, appearing in clusters and then exploding in number. Now imagine its path sliding between Earth and Mars, while the count and size jump in sudden surges.
It's somewhere between 1,000 to 100,000 times more massive than the other two interstellar objects that we've seen before.
Fourfold at a time, like a hidden engine waking up under sunlight. That's the rumor that didn't just trend, it ignited. Some call it 3I Atlas. Others whisper it by a simpler name, the object that refuses to behave. If any of this holds, Mars isn't just a bystander, it's in the splash zone. And what comes next could rewrite plans no one wants to change. Ask one question, and the floor tilts. If it isn't building, why do the spikes arrive right after each sunlit rotation? Why do the brightest glints line up like a belt only the comet can feel? The first frames looked like noise, until they didn't. Specks became glints. Glints became edges. Then edges started to look intentional. A dozen bright points hugging the nucleus. Then dozens more. Then hundreds, spreading into a faint ring that shifted and thickened, as if following rules we couldn't see. Sizes leaped from car-wide to house-long, to spans that would cover a tennis court.
It's about 10 times bigger at the very least relative to the previous interstellar object.
Every fresh set of images brought the same unnerving pattern. More objects, larger silhouettes, tighter spacing. Accidents scatter, this gathered, and the jumps weren't smooth. They came in bursts, counts and dimensions quadrupling over short windows, as if the comet hit thresholds that flipped a switch we don't have a name for. Change the angle, change the night, the chorus stayed the same. The ring brightened where backscatter favored the glints. Metal kept creeping into the conversation. Reflectivity spiked where ice shouldn't shine that hard. Words like nickel and iron started passing from mouth to mouth, never quite landing, but never dying either. The idea that this traveler is more than icy rock turned from a side note to a theory with gravity.
It has also unusual materials being shed off it, like nickel without iron that we only find in industrial production.
What if it's a seed, dormant for eons, stirred awake by our sun's heat, now throwing out metallic outgrowths like a plant under time-lapse? Not life in any way we measure it, but not aimless either. A second idea made people stop mid-sentence. What if it's a generator? Localized fields harnessing charged particles, calling heavy dust in, welding it into plates and spines. A forge without a furnace, run on radiation and motion. A third idea slipped in, electrostatic sintering at comet scale. Micron grains snapping into girders under charge, building faster than anyone thought possible. None of it proven, all of it stubborn. The geometry didn't smooth away with more data. Certain longitudes lit up first, certain arcs filled faster. The swarm never spread evenly. It chose lanes, hinting at internal structure, like ridges under the skin of the comet setting the rhythm. Between surges, the clutter stabilized into spacing that felt almost musical. Gaps repeating, distances echoing. A choreography you could measure but not explain. Then, at the next temperature bump, a thicker wave appeared.
We see how much material is evaporating from the surface of the object in the direction of the sun.
Numbers spiking, size distribution shifting upward as though another layer woke up. The texture wasn't random, it was ritual. A beat formed between spin rate and sunlight, a pattern that reappeared when no one expected it, and refused to vanish when everyone looked twice. That's when Mars stopped being a footnote and became the headline. A single dense fragment can punch a crater, loft dust high, and dim solar arrays long enough to stall a mission. Now swap single for swarm. Imagine compact shards slamming thin air, stirring powder into a lingering veil. Communications turn finicky. Instruments struggle. Rovers pause. Not for drama, but for survival. It doesn't take a doomsday to break a schedule. It takes a few bad impacts arriving on a bad week. And if those waves of growth end with waves of shedding, plates peeling away, drifting on their own, then the red planet isn't bracing for one hit, it's bracing for a season. A season where the sky chooses a new color at noon, and the ground writes fresh scars where maps were already crowded.
With the high-rise camera that is in orbit around Mars, it's on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it could get a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers.
People who watch quietly started trading new words in low voices. Non-zero, corridor, conjunction window, maps updated with tiny shaded bands, where a fragment's wrong day arrival matches Mars at the wrong hour. Odds stayed slim, consequences didn't. Inside the quiet, eyes moved from screens to calendars. If it surges again here, we do this. If a shedding pattern repeats, we do that. Contingencies are not headlines, they're habits. And this object is teaching new ones. Fast. One more phrase slipped into the notes. Patience window. The time you give a puzzle before it decides for you. Each week pulled the lens closer to a simple, difficult truth. The anomaly is consistent. Different nights, different instruments, different hands on the same problem. The outline refused to collapse. Reflective bodies, growth in leaps, not steps. A preference for structure, not smear. It felt like a rehearsal for a discovery trying to become a fact. Not confirmed, not closed, but relentless enough to make confident people choose their next words carefully. When a puzzle won't fit the box you know, you don't shove harder, you build a bigger box. The only metric trending down was certainty that this was ordinary. Speculation sharpened. If fields are the engine, what's the battery? A core layered with charge reservoirs that wake in stages. A spin-aligned dynamo that flips from idle to active once the solar wind crosses a threshold. Or is battery the wrong metaphor? And we're watching a colder, stranger process obey rules no one has tested at this scale. The timing of the surges hinted at thresholds tied to heat and spin. The shapes of the clusters whispered about magnetic lanes. The silence between growth waves felt less like rest and more like loading. Another thought surfaced. Phase changes in exotic ices releasing metal-rich grains bound since another star's winter. Grains that snap together the instant fields say, now. And just when those questions seemed loud enough, the path tightened. Closest approach inside the wide lane between Earth and Mars was always on the calendar. But near miss turns slippery when your visitor is changing shape and mass in real time. Models that once had no room for plates and spines now had to make room, or risk being wrong in exactly the way that hurts most. The swarm's outer fringe edged into places where a mistake doesn't cost a model, it costs a mission. Non-gravitational nudges joined the math. Mass loading from the coma bent predictions into new curves. Margins shaved thin. That's how the whisper turned into a promise. Until this thing calms down, we don't calm down either. Behind the scenes, the choreography began. Telescope time shuffled, windows widened, calibrations lined up so different instruments could watch the same hour in the same way. If another quadruple jump arrived, it would not arrive alone. It would arrive in stereo. You could sense the vow threaded through the quiet. Never let a surge surprise you twice. If it has a heartbeat, measure it. If it has a rhythm, predict it. If it has a tell, find it before the next card hits the table. Observatories a hemisphere apart synced their clocks. Data pipelines were cleared like runways before a storm. The human part of the story doesn't get a graph, but it's there. People who've stared at comets for decades started describing this one with new verbs. It blossoms, it ladders, it sheds. Words normally saved for storms started showing up in notes about a traveler from another sun's back roads. That's how you know the ground is moving. The language changes before the textbooks do. Someone who never saves raw frames saved everything. Someone who never asks for an extra hour asked for 2. Coffee went cold beside screens that didn't. Zoom out. If 3-Eye Atlas really came from far beyond our fences, it carried a memory of places our maps don't name and winters our physics barely imagines. It crossed the dark for longer than our species has held fire and chose to perform here, now, in a way that turns veterans into students again. That's a gift disguised as a problem, the kind you don't get twice, the kind that reminds you the universe does not owe us explanations, it offers them briefly and moves on. So we watch the cadence, we watch the spacing, We watch for a shedding signature that lines up with the growth waves, timing that might tell us when a new ring of fragments loosens and wanders. If a wave peels off toward Mars, the time to adapt won't be months, it'll be days, maybe hours. Plans exist for days. We've been building them in quiet for years, hoping never to use them. This may be the rehearsal no one asked for, and the one we needed. Every pulse recorded now is leverage later. Here's the hardest question, asked with the lights still dim. Are we watching a comet pretending to be a machine? Or a machine pretending to be a comet? Or is that just our bias showing, and the thing in front of us is a third option that doesn't care what we call it, only that we notice the pattern before it finishes the sentence? The next surge might answer that, or it might give us a better question. Either way, the red planet is listening, so are we, because labels can wait, timing can't.